Hi, thank you so much for joining today's conversation. Today we're talking about the gut microbiome. I've received some questions from people who've signed up, so I've put those in the slides so that I can talk through them. But if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask them on the chat. That's part of Zoom, and I'll be able to look at that. Of course, at the end of this, or even along the way, if you wish to ask questions, just turn on the audio, and then you'll be able to ask questions. I like to keep these sessions really interactive and casual because this is all part of our effort to really support the community. I've been running the nutrition clinic for 12 years this year, and my interest in nutrition was really sparked by a number of personal health experiences that led me to really examine what is it that we can do as individuals to look after ourselves better. And really the first step of looking after ourselves is figuring out what's going on. And I think we all sort of exist in this body and we don't necessarily understand the mechanics of it. I've studied in a space called functional medicine that looks at creating these connections between what's happening in your body and the lifestyle and food decisions that you make and the impact that creates on the body. So it's really looking at the physiology, the anatomy, the biochemistry of the body, and looking at the habits that we have on a daily basis. We make over 200 food choices daily. Are those food choices supporting us or not? Hi, John. Good to see you. It's been an incredible passion of mine to try and figure this out. The science in this space is evolving on an ongoing basis. I'll never stop studying this area. We're looking at, like today we're talking about the microbiome, and I think what we know today about the microbiome is going to feel very outdated in 5 years when I think we'll have so much more understanding and research in this space. So I'll share with you what I know. I'm happy to answer questions. And as always, I also would like to introduce the work I do for anybody who wants to know more, and to just share the methodology that I use that I find to be very effective. So if you give me a minute, I'll share my screen. All right, is everybody able to see this? Just a little bit of housekeeping before I continue. This session is recorded. It will be used from time to time as part of our marketing and social media efforts. So if you wish to have your name or your video off while it's being recorded, please go ahead and do so. You can change your name or remove your name so that you can maintain the level of confidentiality that you're comfortable with. All right. Before I get into the microbiome, I'm going to do an introduction of what we do at the nutrition clinic. As I mentioned, I've been running the nutrition clinic for 12 years, and my focus is on helping my clients. I do work largely with women, but I also work with men. My focus is to regain energy, mental focus, gut and hormonal balance without extreme lifestyle changes so that my clients can reclaim a vibrant life, even if they feel unheard and don't know what to do next. Now, I feel like I'd like to specify that there are a couple of things over here that really I'd like to share with you. In the world of functional medicine, in the world of wellness even, there is this tendency for what is extreme, what is super strict to really dominate the conversation. If you're online, if you're looking at Facebook groups, if you're on Instagram, you will hear about diets that are super extreme. And the reality is that whatever shouts loudest and is most surprising and dramatic is what's going to get most attention. But I also very strongly believe that nobody wants to live their life with this sense of always being on a plan, always being on a diet. And so I don't like the word diet. We don't create diets. We're looking at lifestyle changes, and lifestyle changes that are based on knowledge. I do believe that once you know what's going on in your body, if I do a test and tell you you're sensitive to a number of foods, it's then the onus is on you to decide if you want to consume that food or not based on the knowledge you have about your body. I find that very, very powerful, very empowering, versus reading a book or reading somebody else's experience and saying, you know what, I'm going to cut out these 5 foods that my friend cut out. I don't think those kind of strategies work. They don't stick, and they may just not be the right strategy for you. So you end up with not feeling better, and you end up feeling deprived. I think people feel very, very deprived if they have to make food changes. And so I'm very cognizant of the fact that we have to meet our clients where they're at in terms of their ability to make changes, and then step by step take them to a healthier eating lifestyle. I also see that a lot of the people who come to see me have felt very unheard, very overwhelmed. Many of my clients are just exhausted, not sleeping well. They are bloated. They don't wake up feeling rested. For a lot of women, there are hormonal issues, and it can feel really, really overwhelming. It can feel like if I ask you to do anything more, I'm just pushing you beyond capacity. And so I think it's very important to really hear each client's current situation. And sometimes we just look at, okay, what are the 3 things you can do? Because maybe that's all you can do. But if the 3 things are chosen right, they can be really powerful. So I do want to say that, when I say I run the nutrition clinic, the impression most people have is, gosh, everything you do must be about being super strict. And yes, you do need to make changes to have an impact. If everything stays the same, then everything stays the same. But I think it's very important that it doesn't have to be extreme in order to be effective and powerful. We've been, last 2 years, we've won the Expat Living Reader's Choice Award for the Best Nutritionist. This is Bonnie, who runs the nutrition clinic with me. She's a coach. I'm the clinical director and the co-founder. Together, we offer a supportive environment with coaching as well as consultation. My training is in science. I'm a microbiologist and biochemist. I worked in the healthcare industry for 15 years before I became interested in what's going on in my body and how I can take more charge and control over what's going on there. So I studied functional medicine, I studied nutrition. These are some of the spaces where I studied, and I continue to train in this area. So this is the methodology I use. Some of you who've been following these sessions will have seen this, and I think it is really good to repeat this material because it can be quite complex. I like to divide the body into 3 systems. This is your hormonal system, this is your detoxification, and this is your digestive system. So today we will obviously focus on the digestive system. And in almost every form of medicine, there is this belief that all illness and all health starts in the gut. So whether it's mainstream medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, Western naturopathy, there is this very key, and it's incredible to me that this understanding was there so many years ago, that if your gut isn't healthy, you cannot be healthy. And in order to heal the body, you need to really start at the gut level. I do think slightly differently. I always focus on stress and sleep before working on the gut. That's my personal preference because I find that to be a lot more effective. But very soon after I start working with the person, our attention moves to gut health. And I'll explain to you the methodology I use for gut health. So today, when we talk about gut health, we talk about, well, what should you eat? Which foods does your body like? Which foods does it not like? What's growing there? So we carry 20 to 30 trillion organisms in the gut. That's called the human microbiome. There is more DNA that is the microbiome DNA compared to human DNA. So we have 10 times more DNA that's non-human in and around the body. Some of these are healthy, they're called probiotics, and some of these are not so healthy, they're called pathogenic organisms. And if you put this together, the whole microbiome story along with the food we eat, many people end up in a situation called leaky gut, a leaky gut situation, and that's when your body does not digest and absorb well. And I'll explain what that looks like. So your diet and gut health is obviously going to be linked to digestive symptoms like bloating and reflux. But what many people don't naturally recognize is that even something like hives and acne and allergies and eczema has its source in gut health. So if somebody comes to see me with a skin-related issue, my focus is gut health. Obviously, if somebody comes to see me with a gut-related issue, my focus is gut health. If somebody comes to see me with a mood and anxiety issue, my focus is gut health. Because there is this very direct connection between the brain and the gut. The gut is also known as the second brain. And if you're dealing with mood or anxiety issues, there is a very strong likelihood that something's going on in the gut. If you don't have a healthy gut, you will, of course, have nutritional deficiencies, which can then impact how you manage stress and sleep. So I see this quite often. And even your blood sugar issues and polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is an insulin-related hormonal issue, can have its root in an imbalanced gut flora. When I work with my clients, this is the way I take them through this process. I get to know them. In the intake, I will ask questions. If they have this information, I will even ask questions about whether they were born from a C-section, their mom had a C-section or natural birth, because that impacts the gut flora. How many antibiotics they've had as a child or as an adult, that impacts gut flora. Whether they eat organic food or non-organic food, whether they eat sugar, whether they drink alcohol, all of that has an impact on gut flora. We're then able to do some assessment. So in the first appointment, I typically have a sense of what might be happening in their kind of physiology, in their sense of imbalances. But then we use lab tests to really pinpoint where the issues are going to be, because I can only guess so far. These start giving me really personalized information. We then work on food before we focus on stress and sleep. And then we do this whole process of repairing gut health. And today I will share with you what my process of gut health repair looks like. We then move our clients to detoxification before we focus on metabolism, hormonal balance, and long-term resilience. You can see that there's a lot over here. There's a lot of steps and a lot of stages. I think one of the things we do really well at the nutrition clinic is take what is really quite complex with a lot of moving parts and simplify it to the point where you have a system that is organized, where you know what the next steps are going to be. All my clients know where they are on this journey, how long they're going to be on the journey, and we're tracking their progress through this journey. So it's like having that map with you at all times. And I think that's really important, because you can end up, as I said at the start, you can end up feeling like you're on a perpetual plan, and I don't think anybody wishes to live like that. So now let's look a little closely at the gut microbiome. The microbiome, as I said, is this collection of organisms. It's not only in the gut, it is all over the body, but the majority of organisms are in the gut. And this is an example of how it looks. This is a really busy slide, but what I'd like to share with you, if you look on this side, is just how much this gut microbiome and the gut in general is linked to other issues. So we're talking about schizophrenia, cognitive decline. We're talking about autism. We're talking about metabolic and behavior disorders. We're talking about heart disease, artery disease, hypertension, lung disease, liver inflammation, diabetes, bones, muscles, skin, reproductive system, the kidneys, the bladder. Really, everything can at some point be linked back to gut health, and gut health can at every point be linked back to which organisms are living here. So if there's one thing that you take away from today's our session, is that this is not simple. And so when people just say, I'm going to pop a probiotic and it takes care of everything, I think that's highly simplified and not really the right way to be looking at this. It is about understanding, sorry, my slides are moving on their own. It is about understanding that there is this entire population that lives within, it also lives on the skin, and the decisions you make around food and lifestyle can have an impact, and just starting to be aware of that, they can have an impact to feed these right, or to destroy this population. So you want to feed this population right. You don't want to destroy it. And so just, leading a diet or a lifestyle that's not healthy and then popping a probiotic is completely the wrong way to think about this, if that's what anybody's thinking is the answer to balancing the gut microbiome. Just some numbers. The number is wide. What I've read most recently is about 30 trillion organisms are in the body, in and on the body. 90% of all disease can be reached in some way to the gut and health of the microbiome. There are 10,000 different species living in the human microbiome. There are 10 times as many outside organisms as there are human cells. So human cells are actually far less than the microbial organisms there. There are a lot more genes that are microbe-derived rather than human-derived. So this gives information about the number of genes in the human gene catalog. So we have 22,000 known genes. That's 3.3 million genes in the microbiome. So it's just a massive, massive scale. Now, 99.9% of individuals are identical to each other based on their genetics. The differentiation is very, very small. But when it comes to the microbiome, the percentage individual humans that are different from each other in terms of the microbiome is actually greater. So it's 80 to 90%. So this actually differentiates us more than just being different humans. So, when you start thinking about it, is pretty remarkable. It's also remarkable that the body has this resilience to keep these organisms alive, given how much we throw at it, from antibiotics to chemicals to not sleeping well to too much sugar. These organisms are resilient. And if you look back to a couple of generations ago, humans were exposed to a lot more organisms than they are today. If you just think about what we've gone through with COVID and the need to sanitize the way we have done has, for many people, impacted the microbiome. Now, I understand the need to sanitize when you're dealing with a pandemic, but the reality is that humans have coexisted with organisms forever. And having a healthy microbiome and nurturing that is really important to build your immunity, rather than having this idea of just completely isolating and protecting yourself. It is about building that microbiome in order to coexist with other organisms. So let's look at the gut lining. Now, think of this as the inside of the lining. So if the intestine was really sliced across, this is the cell of the inside of the gut lining. This is a single cell layer, which means there is no backup cell. It does regenerate quickly, but it is a single cell layer, which means it is vulnerable to attack or to threats. Its job is to, if you imagine food is passed around here, its job is to make sure that only nutrients and the good stuff enters the bloodstream and goes around the body, and everything else is flushed down the toilet. Now, what tends to happen with a lot of people who have leaky gut is that this lining becomes inflamed. You can see the difference between the two. And when you have this inflammation or breaking down of this lining, it can cause a number of problems. Now, leaky gut, this is called leaky gut, it is caused by a number of common factors. Stress and sleep is important, chemical toxins, food particles that are not fully digested. So if you're not chewing well, if you don't have enough digestive enzymes, and you're not sitting down to digest your food well, that can have an impact. Certain medications can, particularly antibiotics and painkillers can, or pathogens that are not naturally cleared by the body because the body's immune system is not able to do it. I'm going to keep this organ malfunction out of this conversation. But all of these can impact this lining, which can lead to food sensitivities. Now, I see a lot of clients who come in, and one of the first things we run is a food sensitivity panel, because I need to know if somebody is eating something that's causing inflammation in the gut. Because if you don't deal with that, you can end up with immune system issues, and over time, this can have a link to autoimmunity. Now, I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle. Again, coming back to this idea that we have which is that I will just take a probiotic and my gut microbiome is okay. If somebody has a food sensitivity and a gut microbiome issue, I won't even start looking at the gut microbiome till we sort some of this out, because there's no point. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a large wound. You have to first start healing this wound. The analogy I use when I'm speaking to my clients about gut health is really, let's look at this as a garden. Imagine there's a garden in your gut, and the organisms that are growing there are the flowers or the weeds. Now, the flowers are the good organisms, the probiotics, the healthy yeast. You want lots and lots of flowers. You want to get rid of the weeds. You don't want the overgrowth of parasites or certain bacteria or certain yeast, which is all very important. But at the core of that is the soil, right? You can't just keep giving your body flowers. You can't just keep throwing. If you just started throwing seeds into soil, but didn't look at the quality of the soil, those seeds wouldn't last. You'd just be constantly dependent on new seeds. So when we're looking at gut healing, we look at quality of soil, what's getting in the way of the soil being healthy. Is there material there that's not good for the soil? Is there something that's damaging the soil? Is it depleted? Does it not have enough of the basic nutrients? Is there enough water? Is it overworked? Does it get time to rest? Does it get time to rest between cycles of growing plants? Then only we can start talking about it nourishing the right kind of flowers and not nourishing the weeds. And so when I'm working with somebody on gut healing, I use something called a 3R protocol. Always start by removing. So we start by removing food sensitivities, junk food, inflammatory oils, food chemicals, MSG, coloring. As much as possible, we try to start by removing what the body doesn't like. Then we replace, we bring in the right nutrients, we bring in protein, we bring in omega fats and other healthy fats. We bring in sleep, we bring in rest. It's not just food, you have to replace the right habits. And then we move to repair. And repair is a process where you're really taking this gut lining and starting to heal it. And that takes time. It's like repairing a house. You need to give it some time to repair. And the other thing we do as part of repair is what happens after the gut. After what happens in the gut is that the downstream process is all about detoxification. So we support that as well to just close the loop on that. And again, using the soil analogy would be like making sure that the soil is nourished, but then if it has anything that needs to be washed out, that is washed out. Any chemicals that need to be washed out are washed out of the system. And so this is I like this way of organizing the gut healing system, because what I think a lot of people end up doing could be just replacing with probiotics or removing just one part of this. I have a lot of people who come to see me who've already run food sensitivity panels, and they just, they look at the food sensitivities and it's correct to think, okay, I need to cut out these foods. But if you just cut out the foods and you don't do the rest, you'll have to cut out the food forever, really, because it'll keep becoming a problem. So you have to go through this whole process before you get to a point where your gut is really healing to a significant level. Just some a testimonial that I'd like to share. I see a lot of people with gut issues. Out of the work I do, I would say that's probably gut issues and energy issues are probably the dominant symptoms that bring people in to see me. Bloating, indigestion, IBS. I even work with people who have more severe issues like Crohn's disease, where there is an inflammatory inflammation in the gut, which is an autoimmune condition. And I'd like to say that it's one of those areas that actually responds really, really well to changes, because once you get it right, the body just has this incredible way of healing. So I would love to, if anybody here is dealing with any of these types of symptoms, I'd love to have a conversation with you and see if what we do can help you. These are some questions that came through, and some questions that I do get asked quite often in the work that I do. So I just put it here as a talking point. I will go ahead and answer these questions. Of course, if you have additional questions, feel free to put them on the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask the question. So one question I get asked very often is, do I need to take probiotics every day and what kind? So the way I work is we start by identifying what your levels of probiotics are. And I can share with you, I'm just going to jump ahead. So this is the test that I use to identify if a person, what's going on in their gut, what's growing there, right? So over here we have a marker for probiotics. This person's probiotics are on the lower side. I'd want this to be higher, but more importantly, this person has a massive, massive overgrowth of other organisms that we don't want. So this person has a garden with not enough flowers and too many weeds. So over here, would we look at taking probiotics every day? Yes, for a period of time, but only after we have removed the food sensitivities and this whole list and started doing this work. That's when I would add probiotics. So it's whenever I ask anybody to take a supplement, I have to ask myself, and you should be asking this, why am I taking it? Why am I recommending a supplement? Is it because this person has low probiotics, or because we need the probiotics to balance, we need more flowers to kill the weeds? Then yes, it makes sense to take probiotics. But do you just take probiotics because everybody else is taking it? Absolutely not. In the best case scenario, you take probiotics for, while you're working on gut healing, which can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. You take probiotics for a period of time. And then I actually like my clients to sometimes take a bit of a break from probiotics just to challenge the body and see how you feel without them. I also like to encourage my clients to start taking some fermented foods so that they're getting probiotics from food sources as well as capsule sources. And what we tend to do is cycle in and out probiotics. So when people travel, I like them to take probiotics. If you've taken antibiotics, you definitely want to take probiotics. If you're not able to keep to a clean and healthy diet, you take probiotics. But you don't just pop a probiotic every day thinking that's what everybody should do all the time. What kind? Wherever I'm given a choice, I do prefer refrigerated probiotics. We do have some shelf-stable probiotics, but I like the refrigerated kind. We bring our refrigerated probiotics refrigerated from source. So we know from the time they're manufactured that they haven't been out of the fridge. And when we send it to our clients, we send it in an ice pack as well. So I know that whatever the bottle says is what you're getting, because these are live organisms. And if it is meant to be refrigerated and it's on the shelf, some of it is going to die. That's not going to hurt you, but you're wasting money effectively. And if it's shelf stable in a temperate climate and it's sitting out in the heat over here, you've got a problem as well. So I think it's important to recognize these are organisms. The job is to keep them alive and then to consume them. When should I take my probiotics? If possible, take them first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. That's the best time to take probiotics. Now, for some people, that becomes problematic because they're in the fridge, people are in a hurry in the morning. If you take it at another time in the day, it's not that it won't work. You can still take it later in the day or after a meal, but the ideal time would be empty stomach first thing in the morning. How do I know I need to take probiotics? I'm going to come back to this. I can tell each of my clients their probiotic status because I have done these tests for them, and using this sample, I can tell them. Now, this is a urine test that we run. We also run a stool test. I run that for people who have more severe gut issues or if they have more severe skin issues, because that starts really looking at, so here I'm just getting an idea that this person is low on probiotics. A stool test breaks that down to even give me the name of the probiotics, the number, so that I can really map out their probiotic needs. And similarly, the stool test also gives me a lot more detail on this. Not everybody needs that level of detail, but in certain cases we do want that. Right. I'm seeing a lot more of this, where people are coming in saying, it feels like my digestion has changed overnight. All of a sudden, I get bloated, I get stomach cramps. What happened? I think there are a couple of factors. For some people, after they've had COVID, they've had a digestive issue shift. that has remained, and I'm seeing a fair number of people who have this. I also think as we're traveling and picking up more bugs, digestion has gotten an impact. And the third reason I think digestion has changed is because I think I'm seeing a lot more people suffering from anxiety, and there is a connection between digestion and anxiety. So when somebody comes in with this kind of a question, I always go back to my foundation, which is this, right? I need to know what happened. I need to just get them on a super clean, healthy diet to begin with. I need to know if the digestive issue is really coming from the gut or is it coming from stress and sleep. I've worked with a number of people where they feel the issue in the gut, but the source is actually their nervous system, because there is such a strong connection between the nervous system and the digestive system. So this nervous system, and some people call this IBS, where the nervous system affects the digestive system. We look at this, we then look at what's going on in the gut. Do you have food sensitivities? Do you have enough probiotics? Do you have enough digestive enzymes? Are you chewing your food well? There's a whole bunch of things that we look at over here. And we also look at detoxification, which gets impacted. So if somebody has something like this going on, the methodology we use is excellent for really identifying where the problem is and then resolving it in a sequence, stepwise manner. Here, this is the end of my slides, but I wanted to leave enough time for questions. If anybody would like a 10-minute call with somebody from my team, you can follow this link and book a 10-minute inquiry call where I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. I'll be able to really get specific on what you're dealing with and how we might approach it. Of course, if you want to do that now, I'm happy to just open up the Zoom for Q&A. So I'll leave this on while I look at the chat to see if anybody has asked questions. Right now, I have no additional questions, but if you'd like to ask your questions, please feel free. We have about 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A time, so there's a nice amount of time if you have any questions. No questions at all? I'll give you a few minutes to think. You might need some time to think of questions. I have a question about whether practicing meditation help the gut microbiome or reduce pathogen. Absolutely. In fact, meditation does, as does exercise. So a few things that impact the gut microbiome. Obviously, your food, eating enough fiber. So a lot of people take prebiotic supplements. I don't think you need prebiotics necessarily. You need to get fiber. A prebiotic is food for your probiotics, and that's really, you get it from just fiber vegetables, fiber food. Exercise helps. Getting enough sleep helps. Meditation helps. Protecting your gut microbiome by avoiding unnecessary medications and antibiotics definitely helps. Eating fermented foods helps as well. And one more thing that does impact the gut microbiome, if a child is born through a C-section, then that child has lower levels of gut microbiome at birth, and that's called primary inoculation. Some research shows that you will never really get to that same level of microbiome exposure when compared to a natural delivery. But I think there's so much available for kids these days around probiotics and probiotic foods. I do think if you have a child who's a C-section baby, just keep a real eye on the gut microbiome because it could be impacting them and their symptoms. So Nana is asking, with so many causes of gut issues, what's a good way for us to assess what the issue could be? That's a really good question. So like, where would you start from, right? there could be so many places to start from. The most common, if I just start with food, the most common issue that causes gut symptoms, it's not necessarily gut issues, but from a symptom point of view, looking at cutting out the most common food sensitivities, that's gluten, dairy, and eggs. They're the three most common food sensitivities. I would start by just avoiding gluten for a few weeks and see if that makes a difference. Eating enough fiber, see if that makes a difference. And the third one might surprise people, which is to not eat as many salads and eat more cooked vegetables. If your gut is not strong, then eating cold food and salads can be really quite challenging. So eat more cooked food, avoid salads. And the other thing you can try is to have bone broth or collagen. Both are really good for repairing the gut. So these are just some really simple experiments that you could do on your own to see if it helps you resolve any of these symptoms. I've got a question about menopause and whether it impacts the gut. Absolutely. Perimenopause and menopause is a time when the gut microbiome changes and digestion slows down. There are more issues like constipation, bloating, indigestion during perimenopause in particular. The treatment for any symptom that is linked to perimenopause comes back to the root cause. So I always like to go back to root cause. Of course, by all means, try out some of the strategies that I just talked about for leaky gut. No harm trying them out, but you want to identify the root cause, because when you're dealing with perimenopause, there's a lot going on. It's not just the gut, it's also your nervous system that's being impacted. Your detoxification is being impacted. Your sleep hormones, your blood sugar is all being shifted around at this time. So you want to really get a handle on some of these areas. What measures can you take if you're in a super stressful and high pressure job and stress is simply not avoidable? So I'd like to start by saying the goal is not to avoid stress. I don't think we're fragile, and I don't think we are going to break apart, and so we have to avoid stress. I'm not talking about everybody living under a rock in a mountain. That's not the goal. Stress in itself is not bad. In fact, stress is very, very important, and stress is what builds resilience. Now, you have to remember that from a coding point of view, we're still like a caveman or cavewoman. Now, in a caveman or cavewoman's life, stress was typically there in short spurts, and I'm simplifying this. In short, you had short periods of stress, and it's called the fight, flight, hide response. You needed to be able to mobilize your heart, your lungs, your ability to run and hide. Your senses had to be alert because you had to eat or you would be eaten. And that was it. Stress ended till it started again. Now you look at that, and that's how the body is still designed. And we look at how we're living now. The stress that just never goes away wears you down in a way that is very, very different from the first description. The first description of stress is a word called hormesis. Hormesis is about putting your body under stress in order to make it stronger. What we're talking about as long-term stress that just doesn't stop is more like burnout. Now, when there is burnout, and I do a lot of work with burnout, you can be sure that the risk of leaky gut goes up. You can be sure that everything that I described gets impacted by stress. So I think the first thing is to recognize that in order to deal with the high pressure job, you have to take some ownership of your time. And I get it, it's tough. I find this challenging as well. We all get caught up in just the day-to-day, life and the busyness of life. But it's really important. Somebody brought up meditation. I think breath work is a really important way. But I think the message really is one has to slow down. One has to really address that stress before it creates a level of burnout. And I've dealt with the kind of burnout where people are struggling to get out of bed, where people are struggling to exercise, like more than 10 minutes of walking, and burnout, you reach a point where you're that deeply exhausted. So I think it's really important to pay attention to that. All right. got a message saying my gut is better now, but I'm having period issues, changes in cycle. Could this be due to weight loss? Weight loss can impact cycle for sure. If you've cut back a lot on food, that can impact your cycle, your period length. Stress can also impact period length. So maybe we can have a conversation about what might be going on there. I've got a message about somebody who had booked a session, and I think somebody's going to reach out to me. We do realize that we did not call you because one of my staff member was out, but you'll be getting a message to reschedule that. I'm very aware of that. Thank you. Shirley's asking about L-glutamine. Again, L-glutamine is fantastic. L-glutamine comes under this stage. So if I go back to this is one of the nutrients I use for replacing. It's definitely one of the repair nutrients. L-glutamine is great, but if nothing else is done, then L-glutamine alone is not going to be magical. So absolutely glutamine is great, but it's not in itself going to create that level of healing. And I think that's the big message here. Probiotics are great, omega fats are great, the right protein is great. Avoiding junk food is great, but you need to really put it all together. There is no magic wand. There's no pill that's going to resolve everything in one go. Can taking high doses of probiotics be harmful? I've not heard of any downside when it comes to probiotics. I do keep up with that research. I think if you're taking high doses, so I tend to dose around 50 to 60 billion colony forming units. That's the standard dose I use for somebody dealing with gut repair. If you're dealing with maintenance, it can be less than that. If you're taking higher doses than that, again, you have to think about why are you taking that, but that's 50 to 60 billion is a pretty good dose. Can I take probiotics with milk, especially the powdered type? So I'm assuming you mean the powdered probiotics. You can take probiotics in milk as long as you're not dairy sensitive. So you want to be sure that dairy itself is not a problem food for you. You also want to be just aware of milk. There are pros and cons to milk. The pros are it's an easy protein, particularly if you're vegetarian. It has classically been a source of vitamin D and calcium. The cons of milk is that a lot of people are sensitive to dairy. It can be a source of chemicals and antibiotics and hormones. It can cause like mucus production. So for people who have sinus issues, milk can be problematic. And it's not necessary for bone health. In fact, some studies show that dairy consumption is not great for bone health. It's not the best source of calcium. So milk is one of those mixed bag foods. It's not all good. I would look at trying some milk alternatives, mixing it up. Sometimes take milk. If you do take milk, look for A2 milk. It is easier on the digestive system. And again, look at your body. If you're dealing with the digestive issue, then please don't drink lots and lots of milk. If you're not dealing with that, if you're not dealing with any of those issues, a little bit of milk is fine. Milk does change when it becomes yogurt, and yogurt's a lot easier to digest than milk is. So just a little conversation on milk over here. Thank you for these questions. This is great. Any more questions? All right, I'm assuming all questions are answered. Just to let you know that the next 2 weeks, I won't be doing the Wednesday sessions. I'm traveling. So I will come back in the first week of May. And we will be talking about eczema. I think that's what's scheduled for that. But look out, go ahead and make the book your slot on the open office tab on our website. And we will definitely be running these for all of May. And then I will let you know if we are continuing in June over the summer break. I have one question, if oregano oil helps. Oregano oil really helps for this. So if I go back to this person here. So for this person, we use, sorry, I'm jumping around. We used oregano oil to clear this. Oregano oil is a natural antimicrobial, which helps reduce the overgrowth of yeast, which is what this person is experiencing. You need to be sure with oregano oil that you're getting a strong enough dose, but it's also got, it's in a capsule that is enteric coated. So it's not a capsule that will break down just as you swallow it, because oregano oil is really, really strong. You want it to literally reach your stomach before it opens up. So it needs to be a thick coating. And it's very, very good. It works really, really well. If I have a question, if there's stomach sensitivity, will it be too strong? It can be strong. I always get people to start with literally 1 capsule. I have people taking 4 to 6 capsules, and I have no problem with that. I like to do oregano in a short, sharp way. We're using it over a short period of time to clear this. I don't necessarily keep people on oregano long term, but there are exceptions. In some cases, I do keep them on oregano for a longer term. But yes, it can be super powerful, really, really helpful. But again, ask yourself, why am I taking it? Am I taking it because I know I have an overgrowth of organisms? If you take it and you don't have an overgrowth of organisms, one of the downside of too much oregano is you can start actually killing the good bacteria. It is a natural antimicrobial. So you want to give it for a short period of time, kill the organisms that you need to kill, but don't kill these, really repopulate these while you do that. Great. Any other questions? If not, I will sign off now, and I'll see you back in a couple of weeks in early May. And feel free, if you do want to have a conversation, feel free to just book through this, and we'll definitely reach out to you. Take care. Thank you.